The Spotlight brought to you by Beacon Plumbing.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm David Rose. This week we marked Fentanyl Awareness Day, a way to bring attention to this terrible toll that this drug is taking on society. So tonight we're putting the spotlight on efforts to hold dealers accountable if they sell a pill that kills someone. Here in Washington State, anyone can be criminally responsible, charged with homicide, if you supply a deadly dose of fentanyl. The charge is called controlled substance homicide. It can be a difficult case to build and even harder to prove in court. But in Bellevue, an undercover narcotics detective is putting in the detailed work needed for prosecutors to charge someone who kills someone by selling them a fentanyl pill. The Spotlight's Zach Anders talked to that detective, a King County prosecutor handling these cases, and a local mom who lost her daughter to a deadly overdose. Brillian Lynch had just turned 18 years old. Despite successfully completing a rehab program to get off fentanyl, investigators say she reached out to a guy who sold her the pills that killed her.
Is every death then considered a homicide, or should it be?
Absolutely. Every one of these cases, every one of these deaths can be sourced back to a dealer who is supplying, poisonous fentanyl or whatever substance throughout the community. At this point, I'd say it's pretty common knowledge in the drug world that those pills are fentanyl pills. The pills themselves almost always test positive for fentanyl. I don't think I've ever had a test come back negative for fentanyl. In Bellevue, we feel that those people should be held accountable for their actions and should be held accountable for causing another person to lose their life.
Tell me about one of those successful convictions.
She was 18 years old. She just turned 18 the week prior to her death. She had successfully completed a rehab program to get off of fentanyl. And for her 18th birthday, she was gifted by her parents to go on a mini 2 or 3 day trip. And unfortunately, she reached out to an old friend of hers, or someone she believed to be a friend, and that friend sold her fentanyl pills. And so Brillian had to take the ferry for this particular trip, and I was able to confirm that she actually met with this friend and she had been with him all afternoon, and they eventually parted ways. She went to get on the ferry and she had overdosed on the ferry, heading over, I believe, to Kitsap County. She was able to be revived that day, returned to her car, had a good weekend, came back, and unfortunately, the first night she was back, she overdosed in her bedroom on a fentanyl pill. We were able to tie that person, that dealer, to her death, or to her deal prior to getting on the ferry, and he pled guilty to delivering fentanyl prior to her getting on the ferry.
Do you know how much she bought the pill for?
At the time, I know she planned to buy 10 pills, and I think she was buying them for $40.
Yeah, this is brilliant. Her self-named Happy Brilliant. She was just always such a happy girl, just naturally happy.
He knew he was selling fentanyl.
Of course he did, absolutely. Absolutely he did. They all know it. They're not getting prescription pills from a pharmacy. They all, if they're dealing those drugs, they know they're fentanyl. That's, this is what they're made out of. It was Joe Marciano first thought it was a good case for homicide, and then I guess he brought it to his peer group, and they said no, and then they were not going to charge this person with anything, which destroyed me all over again.
My name is Joseph Marcasano, and I've been with the prosecutor's office for over 11 years. So Brilliant's case was really tricky because we could pinpoint when we believe that she was sold drugs. And we know that the same day that she was sold those drugs, she actually overdosed, but she didn't die. You could make the argument that she probably overdosed from the same pills that she bought 3 to 4 days prior, but we had no other witnesses or evidence to tell us where exactly she was or what she was exactly doing during that time. And even if we knew that she was in a specific location, that doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't meet up with someone who could have sold her other drugs. We had a couple of other prosecutors also look at the case to see if fresh eyes would give us different ideas. And because of that 3 to 4 day gap, we felt that we could improve the controlled substance homicide charge. But because we had evidence of the day that she was sold the drugs and she non-fatally overdosed that day, we did charge drug delivery for that specific transaction.
For the delivery charge, how long is that sentence?
So it depends on the person's criminal history, but someone with no criminal history who's convicted of drug delivery, their standard range is 12 months in a day to 20 months in prison. The homicide conviction is several more years. It's roughly between 4.5 to 5.5 years in prison. So the tricky thing about the controlled substance homicide charge is it reads like it's a very easy charge to prove, that all you have to show is that there was a drug sale, someone took those drugs, and someone died. It's actually more complicated than that because someone may have multiple drugs in their system. There might be a delay between when they buy the drugs and when they actually pass away, so we can't say that those drugs caused the death. But it's also, we have to be mindful that this statute doesn't require any type of bad intent or any type of harm that the drug dealer wished to cause the person. So in theory, if two people were just buying drugs that day and sharing them with each other, one of them could be on the hook for a controlled substance homicide charge. So in order for us to bring that charge, we look for additional aggravating factors or circumstances in the case. And that can be things like the drug dealer misled the person about what the pills actually contained or said, oh, they're safe, don't worry about it, or something like the drug dealer continues to deal drugs after knowing that they caused someone's death. We would consider that an aggravating circumstance.
This person knew what he was doing. Even in his texting to Brilliant, just literally 2 hours before she died, he asked if she was okay because he hadn't heard from her for a day and said, I don't want you dying on me now.
In other overdoses, it's often elements of drugs in the system, and the courts will have to throw their hands up and say, we can't say for certain which was the fatal drug with the fatal dose.
But this is not, I want to be real clear, this is not an overdose. I don't like when I hear people saying an overdose. An overdose, tends to mean like they made a mistake and they took too much. This was poison. I think that dealing fentanyl is different than other drugs. Dealing fentanyl should be attempted murder, at the very least, because that's just what it is. It's very, I think, cut and dry. I think Seattle, Washington is progressive in so many wonderful ways, but I feel like they've missed the mark on drug use because they're looking at it from a perspective of a casual user and not criminalizing that. But they're not looking at what's happening to people like me, my family, my daughter. He knew her before. It wasn't just somebody off the street. He knew her, and he knew that she had gone to treatment. He knew she had been clean. He could have made a choice not to sell to her, but he didn't. He made $20 for her life.
Had Brilliant died on the ferry during that first overdose instead of a few days later at home, the controlled substance homicide charge likely could have stuck. But because of that 3-day gap, prosecutors could not otherwise prove those pills came from the same dealer. After she died, though, Bellevue police busted Stephen Talaga for selling fentanyl pills again, this time to an undercover officer. That gave prosecutors enough evidence to convince Talaga to plead guilty to the lesser charge of delivery. He's in prison now, serving a 20-month sentence. Still to come.
I've been at my breaking point for a very long time.
A Renton woman mourning the murder of her daughter and grandson waited years for this court date. But as the alleged killer goes before a judge, she isn't there. What held up this cold case and what comes next? Olympia police are searching for the person they say randomly killed a family's dog on Sunday. This is the second attack like this in Thurston County in little more than a month. One of the owners tells us that her son was home Sunday afternoon and heard their dog crying in the backyard. Police say a stranger slashed their family pet with a machete or a knife multiple times, killing the 4-year-old husky mix named Finnegan.
Keep your animals safe and know that we need to let people know this happened because it's that unbelievable. You just have to be aware.
In late March, Fox 13 spoke with a family whose dogs were attacked by a man with a machete in Lacey. So now, police in Olympia and Lacey are working together to see if there's a connection. There's been no arrest made in either case. Police say neighbors did see a brown pickup truck leaving the area on Sunday. If you saw anything or you know who's committing these horrific killings, please contact 911. The suspect in a brutal 1994 murder of a mother and her 3-year-old son is now behind bars. This week, he went before a judge for the first time in the case on aggravated murder charges. The Spotlight's Matthew Smith has the story and explains why this day came too late for the victim's family.
29 years. I mean, the poor boy only got to live 3 years. That's not even a... Okay.
An emotional day in court, 29 years in the making.
The not knowing.
Back in 2022, we introduced you to Vianne Falcon. This handwritten letter introducing us to her daughter's case, asking Fox 13 to help spotlight Stacy's unsolved murder. She writes that her family would only get justice if the story, quote, gets enough exposure to put pressure on the King County prosecutors to charge the killer. Stacy Falcon Dewey and her 3-year-old son Jacob are the ones in this black and white photo. After charges were announced in 2022, she told us she went to her daughter's grave, finally confident that good news was on its way.
Your justice is just around the corner. You know, that's going to happen while I'm still alive.
Sadly, she was wrong. Vianne passed away shortly after that interview. COVID and legal wranglings delayed a hearing for her daughter's alleged killer, Jerome Jones, the man you see here in cuffs. The judge ordered that we can't show his face in court, though a mugshot from his days in Kern Valley, California State Prison is available. A lawyer, though, now telling the judge that murder charge he was serving time for has been vacated, leading his family to plead for privacy.
So out of respect of our family, I ask that until we get the facts, that it's not something displayed. Their family was not the only one affected by this.
Charging documents indicate that Jones's DNA was found on Stacy back in 1994, though it wasn't until 2001 that new tech could pin that on Jones. Stacy's family didn't even know about it until years later when the Seattle Times uncovered the DNA match during its reporting on the case. It appears little evidence has changed, save another DNA match. Prosecutors say they found semen on the jacket of the young boy matching the suspect in 2021. Renton police this week explaining, quote, we acknowledge how frustrating it can be for a victim's family when immediate closure to a case like this can't be realized, but we hope they find solace in knowing that our detectives never gave up trying to find who was responsible for the senseless deaths of Stacy and Jacob.
So I blame them for me having this my smile is gone. Has been.
Matthew Smith with that update. And while Stacy's mom died before seeing this day, other family members are still alive, and they want to see this process all the way through to the end. When the Spotlight returns, Eyes in the Skies, the upgraded tool law enforcement's using to put the brakes on street racers. Ahead of National Police Week, thousands of officers are in our nation's capital pleading for more support. Law enforcement officials are urging Congress to step up and back the blue, as many cities around the country struggle with rising crime and staffing shortages plague departments due to many cops quitting and retiring. The Marshall Project reports about 18,000 law enforcement officers have left since 2020, ever since agencies have been struggling with retention, recruitment, and funding, especially in the wake of the defund the police movement.
We need to bring the rhetoric down regarding policing. We need to make this a more attractive job again. And the way we do that is by having fully supported by our elected lawmakers.
We need to make sure these men and women feel as though they are the heroes that we know that they are. And safe law enforcement equals safe communities. And safe communities equals safe law enforcement.
There are legislative changes coming in the new year in the fight against illegal street racing here in Washington State. But unfortunately, it won't be available in time for this summer's busy car meetups. That's why tools like the Washington State Patrol's aviation unit remain more important than ever to track down offenders and keep racers off the roads. The Spotlight's Jennifer Dowling takes a look at how troopers are using overhead surveillance to keep suspects from speeding away.
When illegal street racers endanger the public, the Washington State Patrol wants drivers to know it has eyes in the sky.
Smoky 3, we're overhead, we got him in sight.
The aviation unit just released these images showing how they're cracking down from above.
They're racing again now, south on Auburn Way.
Although the use of planes isn't new, technology is changing the game.
The FLIR system, the infrared system, the advanced ability to track vehicles through traffic.
And vehicles passing on the shoulder.
Just a few days ago, the WSP unit spotted this driver blasting down State Route 3.
When you're going 127 miles an hour and a 45 or 55 miles home, you're taking not only your life in your hands, you're taking the lives of everyone else in your hands.
Cameras follow the 35-year-old to a church where she ditched the car and ran off into a wooded area and was soon arrested. State pursuit laws have changed the way law enforcement can go after drivers. That's why Loftus says resources like this are crucial.
We simply have more people who are flaunting the law.
When it takes effect, Senate Bill 5606 will also expand the definition of the crime.
One of the additions was it now encompasses stunt driving or drifting.
Kastner says it also allows prosecutors to charge race promoters, not just the drivers, and gives them the ability to confiscate vehicles.
We'll be able to impound the vehicles for 72 hours. And then if you're convicted twice of racing or promoting or being a piece of that law, then we will be able to seize your vehicle.
If you're caught street racing, we're going to impound that vehicle.
Senator John Lovick says people have died as a result of illegal racing, and it's time to crack down.
We can't keep doing what we're doing, and I think that taking that car is probably the way to do it.
That was Jennifer Dowling reporting. Assistant Chief Kastner tells her that along with the typical dangers associated with street racing, it often brings with it other criminal activity. We've seen shootings, murders, robberies, and assaults. Up next, a new approach to addressing mental health-related 911 calls after so many attacks on firefighters. This program pushes to keep everyone involved safe. An update now to an exclusive story we first brought you right here on the Spotlight. Seattle City Council unanimously voted to pass new legislation aimed at protecting the city's firefighters. The measure will make it a crime to physically interfere with firefighters as they try to provide aid, extending the same protections already in place for police. It also enables police and firefighters to collaborate on strategies to reduce confrontations with the community. We've been following this story for weeks after the city launched an online portal to report assault data that we obtained showing more than 130 attacks on emergency personnel last year. This year, firefighters have already reported more than 50 acts of workplace violence. There are now 2 fire departments in Kitsap County who are taking a new approach to address behavioral health. Calls for service will now have extra help to get people connected to life-changing resources. The Spotlight's Frankie Thompson went to Paulsbo for a closer look at the program.
Paulsbo Fire Station was first in Kitsap County to launch the Community Assistance Referrals and Education Services program known as the CARES program. Firefighters and social workers are paired together, responding to the uptick in behavioral health related calls.
Medic 71, engine 71.
Responding to an emergency. Calls for service are steadily increasing for members of the Paulsbo Fire Department.
Our requests for service, needs for service are growing faster than our organization can keep up. And so we had to come up with creative ways to make our services more efficient and at the same time provide a higher level of service to our community.
Their answer was finding a new tool to address the increase in behavioral health related issues. The department launched the CARES program in 2021, pairing the medical experience of a firefighter and resource experience of a social worker to get people the help that best fit their needs.
And we've seen a significant decline in the folks that we work with Where some of these folks, we might have seen them 13, 14, 15 times over a matter of 3 months. Now we're seeing them perhaps once or twice over those 3-month periods. And that's just through single or even maybe 2 contacts with our CARES team.
3 months into its own CARES program, Central Kitsap Fire and Rescue joins Poulsbo in their efforts to address the growing issues surrounding behavioral health.
I felt as a paramedic that I've been able to just put a Band-Aid on problems and get people to the hospital, and hopefully things get fixed, and then see them the next shift, and then the next shift. And so being on this team, we're able to actually follow through.
And just in the last 3 months, we're getting people connected with addiction services, social services, and the ability to age with grace in their own homes. And that's an extension that Central Kitsap wants to provide to its citizens. That is the best part of this program, is by providing a higher level of service to our citizens.
A service Central Kitsap is already seeing positive results. Their team recalls one of the first cases of the program, helping a mother and daughter who had chronic substance abuse disorder.
I think for a while there was a 911 call probably weekly for one of them having either withdrawal symptoms or intoxication symptoms. And we worked with them really extensively for about 3 months, trying to get them connected with services, getting them into detox. And the daughter, we were able to reconnect with her family back in Kansas and got her into her 30-day inpatient right before she left. So she went to go visit her kids sober and is doing well in Kansas now.
Success that Gillander says more communities can see by combining the powers of firefighters and social workers.
This is a way for us to address those issues in our community, and I think this is the future of the fire service. I think 20 years from now, social workers in the firehouse are going to be just like paramedics were 20 years ago.
That was Frankie Thompson reporting. Cities including Bellevue, Tacoma, and Spokane also have similar programs after Washington State passed a bill in 2015 to legalize the initiative. That's all the time we have on this edition of The Spotlight. Until next time, be smart and stay safe.